Today on CTV News at 5, sifting through the rubble for answers. 2 separate weekend fires leave 1 person dead, 1 injured. Disappointing, no WestJet service for Lethbridge as the city works to help cover the costs of an aging airport. And first in 6 centuries, why Pope Benedict is stepping down.
CTV News with Alyssa Carpenter.
Good afternoon. A man is dead after a fire tore through his Southside home this weekend. The man was the caregiver for his 100-year-old mother. That blaze was the most serious of 2 separate fires this weekend. Jeanette Rocher reports.
Flowers decorate the front lawn of this London Road area home, left here by a neighbor in memory of the man who once lived in this house.
Just tragic. Just tragic.
Area residents say the man who lived here was Alexander McKenzie. He was home alone Saturday night when his house caught fire, but unfortunately didn't make it out alive.
Alex was a very gentle person, he was a heck of a gardener. He took care of his mother and had done that most of his life. He took care of his mother's seniors, friends, cut lawns, those kind of things.
The blaze broke out around 8:30 Saturday evening in the 700 block of 11th Street South. According to investigators, the fire started in a room at the back of the house.
The fire itself was basically contained in that room. However, there's quite extensive smoke and heat damage to the rest of the house.
Fire crews were strained this weekend. We're told 3 of the 4 Lethbridge stations were called here to this Southside location to battle this blaze. And while they were here, a second inferno broke out simultaneously.
So we freed up some of the trucks from this fire to go to the other one. This was a 2-story home that it appears that there was a fire in the garage that caught the rest of the building.
That second fire occurred at a residence in Fairmont. No one was hurt in that blaze, but it did cause $260,000 in damage. Crews haven't yet begun to investigate this incident because they've been tied up with the London Road fire. That investigation just began this morning, so officials can't provide too many details into what actually happened here.
At this point, we have no evidence to indicate it's suspicious. However, it's in the infancy stages of the investigation, and there's a significant amount of follow-up investigation to be conducted.
Jeanette Rocher, CTV News, Lethbridge.
An autopsy is scheduled for later this week in Calgary. And time now to check in with Dorian. Dorian, another gorgeous day out there. Are you sure it's actually February?
Yeah, I know. Alyssa, I actually did take a look at the calendar before I had breakfast this morning just to make sure I was on the right page. And yeah, lo and behold, it is February, but we're having a nice stretch of very mild temperatures. Average is 1 degree for this time of year, so we're certainly surpassing those numbers. And I'll tell you how long that trend is going to last in a couple of minutes.
All right, thanks, Dory. A threat assessment expert says giving teachers guns or locking kids in school won't prevent school tragedies like the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut. The Canadian director of the Centre for Threat Assessment and Trauma Response says incidents like the Sandy Hook shootings have focused the debate on gun control when it should be on stopping the behavior before it gets that far. Terry Vogt reports.
Kids need something, they tell us.
At the Palliser School District office, staff and police officers who work with young people are undergoing violence threat risk assessment training. But they won't be hearing about gun control or building bulletproof classrooms. Instead, the expert in this field, Kevin Cameron, is focusing on prevention and being proactive.
Even the United States Secret Service acknowledged that all the school shooting cases that they looked at, every single one of the shooters communicated beforehand, many of them months beforehand, what they were thinking of doing.
Palliser is one of 6 southern Alberta school districts that joined with police, health and social services in signing a regional protocol to create a consistent approach on how to respond to threats and threatening behavior. And it's in place in all schools, starting with kindergarten.
Do we have threat and risk assessments with elementary kids? We do. Absolutely. It doesn't matter if you're a family with young kids or older kids. There tends to be some things that go on with families that put kids in a situation where they need help.
Experts say the elementary school massacre in Sandy Hook, Connecticut has intensified the conversation over school violence. But Cameron says there's too much emphasis on simplistic solutions like gun control.
The debate has gone on south of the border now, how to simply defend ourselves against somebody when they have the gun, as if we have no way of possibly intervening before that point, and that's the problem right now.
It's terrible what happened there, and so I think now education is the key to bringing it forward, right? If the more that we know about what we can do to prevent it, the better it is.
According to Kevin Cameron, one of the best methods to prevent violence is to have police officers in the schools. He says high-risk youth are actually drawn to police officers if the officers are engaged and approachable. He says research also indicates that students and staff are more likely to report concerns to an officer that they know and trust. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Lethbridge.
In the Palliser School District, every school counselor in every school and at least one administrator per school have taken threat assessment training. The Alberta Federation of Labour is accusing the province of keeping healthcare secrets. The Federation says the province is talking about new healthcare taxes and spending accounts, but Freedom of Information requests by the Federation's researchers were denied by both the Premier's office and the Finance Department. Researchers had requested all documents on alternative ways of raising money for healthcare. There are 26 pages, but 22 pages were denied because they are the content of cabinet discussions. The other 4 pages are being withheld under an exemption in the Freedom of Information Act.
If there's going to be a conversation about introducing new user fees or healthcare premiums or other ways of essentially privatizing the cost of healthcare and introducing American-based models of funding the healthcare system, then that ought to be an honest conversation that we have with Albertans.
Phillips says the FOIP request shows provincial departments are talking about downloading more healthcare costs onto Albertans. It seems Lethbridge has been left out, at least for now. WestJet announced its new Encore regional service using Bombardier turboprops. That service will begin in June. 2 new cities were added to Encore's routes today, Fort St. John, BC, and Nanaimo, BC. Additional routes will be added, but for now, Lethbridge isn't on the list.
We've asked them, was there any flaws in our presentation, and they said no, it was a very good business case, and certainly was well presented and sounded good to them.
And the news comes as Council was told just how badly the aging airport is in need of money and repairs. A private consultant presented the report to Council. It says without a new governance model, the airport will continue to hemorrhage money. Council has agreed to some short-term funding. The airport needs major dollars put toward aging infrastructure, some of which is 60 years old.
We do know, because of its proximity to Lethbridge, that the vast majority of the users of the airport are in fact Lethbridge citizens and Lethbridge businesses. So it does make sense to assist the county, at least in the short term at this point in time, to see whether or not we can find out whether the airport is viable on its own.
Council has committed up to $200,000 per year until the end of 2014. A handful of demonstrators are calling for the abolishment of the Indian Act. The group calls itself the Idle No More Resistance. The group says Idle No More isn't creating equality, but a racial divide with its continued demonstrations and roadblocks. Protesters we spoke to say they care about Aboriginal rights. They just believe the protests are doing more harm than good.
The Idle No More group kind of muddied the waters with everybody with the racial part of it, and we're asking for equality for all Canadians. We don't think there should be any policies or laws on Canadian books that discriminate between 2 different groups because of race, just as it shouldn't be because of sexual orientation or anything else. And we find that the Indian Act and the treaties kind of cause that divide. They kind of make that separation possible.
The group was formed over social media. A bombshell announcement by the highest man in the Catholic Church. Local reaction to Pope Benedict's announcement. First, here's a look at today's market numbers.